Hello folks, through, through the IO exception versus try and catch exception. We covered this one in part of chapter 2 and a little bit in chapter 12 based on this version of the book that I have. But if you're noticing when we try to write something to a file or reading a content from a file inside a Java program, we always use the throw exception in the main program. And why we need that one, and what is this IO exception, and what is the class of IO exception. When we try to read a file and it could cause an exception, what is the exception? Let's consider it try to read a file for us and the file doesn't exist. Let's look at this example. In this example, we would do the Java IO, you know, the utility scanner. What we're going to do that one, open a class, open file reader. Right here, if you notice, as I mentioned before, we always, when we try to read a file, we use throws IO exception. We didn't use the throw IO exception in any part of the program or read, write, variable, number, or whatever that we did so far. But right now at this stage we try to read from somewhere outside of our program, and that outside is from a file which is in the C drive, D drive, or depend to your operating system, the file that you have in your flash drive or C drive. So that's require a little bit different way behaving that one. How about if we try to read the file and file doesn't exist? Program should know what it's supposed to do. The solution to that one, normally in this one we say through IO exception, so it allow us to read the file and go for that one. If we cannot find the file report.txt, what it gonna do? It gonna crash our program. Let's test it and look at that one. Let's run this program. I'm going to bring my and post the file that already we grab it. Put the file right here. Try to save it. I'm going to save it right here. Some proper area that you remember always. But if you notice in right here, I don't have any files such as this file right here, report.txt file. I don't have the file report.txt file. Well, let's go ahead. Okay, let's see. I'm going to save it right here. Save. Compile the code. Let's say end the compilation. My program is compiled successfully. Let me bring it up. You're going to see that one. But imagine right now, if I'm going to execute this program, let's go ahead. I'm going to click on the execute option and execute this program. Again, I lost the screen. And execute this program. Let's say add compilation and execute the program, run it. It's going to give me a bunch of error, and the error that it's going to say to me the file doesn't exist. These are the error, screen error. And if I'm going right here, you're going to see it gave me a Java IO exception, file not found exception. A report.txt file, it cannot find it. Now, if the file exists, it doesn't give you the error at all. If the file report.txt exists, you don't get that error at all. But now, again, I'm going back to my video right here. If I don't want that error, right here I have a solution. A solution is going to be that I can try the try and catch option instead of the throw IO exception. I may in my program say try, open brace, put all this line of code that I have right here, and then I'm going to say catch, and catch you're going to say cannot find, cannot write to a file. So I mean read from file. Let me go bring up this screen. I mean this file should be a little bit different than right here. This file right here, this one. And read the file. You cannot open the report.txt file and cannot read from file, and you're going to see the exception right here, file not found, and that your program is continuing, it won't crash. Let's run this example. Let me highlight this file and copy that one, go back to JGrasp, create a new file, click on the file, new Java file, create for me Java file. I copy paste the code right here, and let's go ahead and file save as. I'm going to save it on the same directory. The file name, open file to read, save it. You must close the window before you, okay, let's close save. Why it just give us error? Okay, let me close the window before. Let's go close the other window right here. And how about now? Let's see, can it save it for me? Save as, file reader, save over, file reader, yes, let's consider save over. I'm going to saving the file over the previous file, compile it, compile and execute. If you're noticing, the code exactly is the same code that I have in the IO exception. When I put in my main right here, I put IO exception, but this time I'm using the try and catch. I use try and catch. And now if I compile that one, it didn't give me any error. I'm going to run it. What it going to just tell me is that the file not found, but the program didn't crash. So that's the difference between the IO exception when we use it on the JGrasp, when we using the throw the exception. Throw exception, I'm not handling any error. I'm not handling any error which is caused my program to crash. Just I'm going to say allow me to access to outside of my program, which is C drive, D drive, and write a file and read from a file. But this one I'm going to say try this example, try to read this file. If you cannot find this file and you got some error, throw me an exception, and the exception is by itself is a class, which is let me move this screen a little bit to the center so you can see it very easily. And I'm going to say try to read this file, report.txt file for me. If you be able to read it, that's okay. Go ahead, read the first line of it and display for me to the output right here. Reading the first line, you read the first line and display to the output for me. If you cannot find it, if you throw is fail and it jump to the catch, catch generate an object, and that object, it could be many different options like right here. So the object is right here. When it throwable, it throw the arrow. One option is going to give me arrow that I'm going to use IO exception in the main portion, like this screen, right here, the IO exception, this example. If it does not, if I have an exception to handle the exception, it could be IO exception, and that's what we use right here. We use right here, we use the IO exception right here, and we said IO exception arrow, generate exception. In this exception, then it could be IO exception, which is in our case that it is IO exception. It could be another scenario, runtime exception. It try to read multiple lines, but it find out it is not a text file, it cannot read it. or which is follow up in the IO exception file not found, the same error that we got when we ran this example. If you remember, when we ran this example, it generated for us an error, this example, which we're using through the IO exception. When we ran this file, it generated an error for us, and the error, let me see, do I have it still or not? The error is right here. See, this is the error. File not found, IO exception. So this is the way that we try to use the try and catch to catch up the error that it causing the failed program. However, if I'm going to put the report.io in my same location that I use in my that I'm going to put my Java file open file to read. If I'm going to put a file, name it report.txt, what you're going to do, you're going to read the first line of the file and return to me the file, and never get to the catch, and never go to the catch, and straight go to the next line, which is program can be continued without no crash. Thank you so much. This is the concept of the try and catch versus throw exception. In chapter 4 of your book, this version of the book, we use throw IO exception. The better than throw IO exception is try and catch, and we cover much more concept, much more in detail in the second second part of this class, which is not in this class. The next class that follow up the advanced portion of the Java, so you're going to learn much more about try and catch option. Thank you.